We have seen Dexter kill a lot of people throughout the franchise, but it begs the question, how many people has Dexter actually killed? So today, I'll be going over every single person that Dexter has murdered, starting with his original sin. Nurse Mary. It all starts with Nurse Mary, a seemingly normal nurse who's actually a serial killer preying on patients, including Harry Morgan. Once Dexter uncovers the truth,
and that was when I realized that Nurse Mary just might be a fellow traveler.
Harry gives him a kind of unspoken permission to do what needs to be done to stop her from killing him or any other patients moving forward.
Don't let her.
Dexter prepares the kill room and lies in wait for her to return home. When she arrives, they have a short tussle, but Dexter is able to subdue her.
You never forget your first time. Mine was with an older woman.
Tinker, where are you, kitty?
When she wakes up, she's strapped to his kill table, and Dexter confronts her with her scrapbook of victims. He feels the fear as her heart rate increases before stabbing her in the chest. He dumps her body in the swamp known as Alligator Alley and keeps her earrings as his first trophy.
My first trophies.
Despite Harry strictly forbidding any trophies or leaving any traces of his kills. As his first time, the kill is clumsy, emotional, and deeply personal due to Mary targeting Dexter's own dad. It's Dexter's trial by fire, essentially where his primal instinct meets the earliest stages of a polished ritual. But more importantly, it's the moment where Harry's code becomes more than theory. It becomes action. But first kills are rarely clean, and rules are often broken. While Nurse Mary was about saving Harry, Dexter's second kill reveals a shift. From personal justification to calculated execution. And now that Dexter had a taste for blood, he couldn't stop. Tony Ferrer, a loan shark with ties to a young immigrant's death, is not a textbook serial killer, but Dexter considers him guilty enough to warrant the table.
I was dying to, starting with taking care of Batista's one that got away, Tony Ferrer.
After learning that Ferrer was responsible for the death of one woman, which led to the suicide of her son, he knew Tony would be his next kill.
Tony deserved to die.
Posing as Patrick Bateman, using a fake ID from Masuka, Dexter infiltrates Ferrer's world by pretending to need a loan. He then confirms Tony's crimes using ballistics from his gun and by pinning down his MO. Once he subdues Tony, Dexter straps him into the elaborate kill room inside the Jai arena where they first met. After a bit of denial, Ferrer eventually admits to what he's done. That was enough for Dexter, who killed him with a swift slash to the throat. In classic Dexter fashion, he dismembers Tony and disposes of the body in the same swamp where he left Nurse Mary's corpse, mistakenly believing the job done. But Ferrer's arm resurfaces, with his very unique ring still attached, threatening to unravel Dexter's secrecy and land him in prison. Luckily, Dexter is called in to work the scene after the arm is discovered. So while no one is looking, he lets an alligator eat the arm to finish the cleanup and get rid of the only remaining evidence.
Alligator came out of nowhere. I'm lucky I got out of the way in time, but it took the arm.
Dexter's evolving methodology still lacked the discipline he'll later be known for, but his ability to think on his feet is as impressive as ever. But in that very failure, the stage is set for growth. This kill was cleaner than Nurse Mary's, but not by much. But Dexter was growing too sure of himself to stop now.
It was a strange feeling after my second kill, like sitting in the gap between who I was and who I was becoming.
His next target would show just how confident he was already in his ability to kill without getting caught. Mad Dog Moretti. Next, Dexter targets Anthony Mad Dog Moretti, a semi-retired hitman with possibly 200 plus kills. With his free time, Mad Dog began collecting expensive guitars and also became a charter boat captain to keep a low profile and undermine suspicion that he may in fact be a killer, having evaded a police investigation in the past. Dexter vets Mad Dog and discovers that he is not actually retired from doing hits, and he has a new victim lined up. He convinces Harry to let him eliminate Mad Dog truck and gets to work setting up the kill room. He sets the room up perfectly. Plastic sheets, crime scene photos, the full ritual. But as Mad Dog wakes mid-procedure, a desperate fight breaks out and spills into the street. In an unexpected twist, as Dexter is chasing Mad Dog up the street, the old man is hit by a truck and dies before Dexter can land the killing blow. This is a pivotal moment. It's Dexter's biggest screw-up yet. His inability to sedate, secure, and control the moment led to chaos that could ruin his life and his family's. What happened to Mad Dog could have left behind a ton of forensic evidence. Harry is furious and grounds Dexter, temporarily banning him from future kills. The message is clear. If Dexter is to live by the code, there can be no room for error. But that may have been just the motivation Dexter needed, because with his urges as strong as ever, he knew he would have to figure out an airtight ritual if he wanted Harry to let him off the leash. As a result, his next kill is his smoothest one yet. He is only getting better. Levi Reed. Some people argue that Mad Dog doesn't count as a kill for Dexter because it was the driver who killed him, not Dexter. Under that interpretation, it was actually the Levi Reed kill that cemented Dexter as a true serial killer, and it couldn't have happened to a more deserving guy. Levi Reed is a textbook monster. He savors his victims' pain, and his killings are methodical and cruel, so Dexter sees him as a perfectly morally clear target. He abducts Reed, ties him to the kill table, and confronts him not just with his crimes, but with the importance of the moment that this will be Dexter's third undisputed kill, officially marking him as a serial killer by FBI standards. The exchange is chilling. Reed recognizes Dexter for what he is, even before Dexter fully does. This murder isn't just justified, it's symbolic. The ritual is cleaner, the code is clearer, and Dexter finally feels in control. And as Dexter internalizes his returning confidence, he is unwittingly preparing for the most high-stakes kill of the season. And it's one that tests Dexter's morality, patience, and commitment to the code. Captain Aaron Spencer. Captain Aaron Spencer, a revered figure in Miami's maritime circles, is revealed to be a child predator, someone even Harry would have hunted. Dexter tracks him down, slashes him open in a quiet corner of the marina, and silently watches the blood run. Unlike his earlier attempts, this kill is fast, brutal, and efficient. The way he kills Captain Spencer shows the maturing of Dexter's style. The ritual is compact, the logic sound, and the disposal flawless. It's also the moment Dexter discovers an ideal body dumping location, the open ocean. The visual of blood mixing with water smeared across the lens is a cinematic reflection of Dexter's evolution. Mike Donovan. Mike Donovan was a respected child choir director in Miami who hid a horrifying secret. He kidnapped and murdered young boys, burying their bodies to hide the evidence. Dexter discovered Donovan's crimes and carefully planned his capture. He waited in the back of Donovan's car, and when the killer got in, he wrapped a wire around his neck and made him drive to the location where he buried the bodies. Dexter surrounded Donovan with evidence of his atrocities, photographs of the missing boys and the skeletal remains he had hidden away. Strapped to the table and forced to face the truth, Donovan begged for his life. He explained to Dexter that he couldn't help it, couldn't stop himself. Dexter coldly explained that even though he understood that feeling, the feeling of being a slave to murderous urges, Donovan's crimes were against children, and that left no other option. After collecting a drop of blood for his slide, Dexter used a reciprocating saw to slice through the predator's neck. Jamie Jaworski. Jamie Jaworski was a valet who filmed himself raping and murdering women in his free time. Dexter stalked him after watching one of his disturbing snuff videos and confirmed that Jaworski was the man in the video based on a very distinct matching tattoo. Dexter stalked him one night and found him stealing copper from a construction site. Once Jaworski was subdued, Dexter bound him to an impromptu kill table made of sheetrock and explained that justice was finally catching up with him, sliced his cheek to collect a bloodslide, and then cut his head off with a meat cleaver. Jaworski was unapologetic to the very end, telling Dexter that he did kill the woman in the film, Jane Saunders, but he was not sorry. Those heinous parting words probably made killing him all the sweeter for Dexter. Matt Chambers. Matt Chambers was a reckless drunk driver who had killed multiple people in separate accidents. Yet he always managed to escape punishment by changing names, faking evidence, and manipulating the system. Dexter posed as a fellow drunk one night at a bar to get closer to Matt, eventually capturing him without rousing suspicion. In the kill room, Dexter laid out Chambers' history of vehicular manslaughter, surrounding him with reminders of the lives he had taken. Chambers realized his luck had finally run out. Dexter, calm and methodical as always, performed his ritual, the cheek slice, the blood slide, and finally the fatal knife to the chest. Jorge Castillo. Jorge Castillo ran a human trafficking operation out of his Miami marina, smuggling Cuban immigrants and murdering those who could not pay their debts. Dexter uncovered his crimes after finding one of Castillo's imprisoned victims. Dexter cornered Jorge in his own garage, where he had already set up the plastic kill room. Strapped to the table, Dexter forced Jorge to face the evidence of those he had exploited. Unmoved by Jorge's excuses, Dexter collected his blood sample and drove the knife into his chest, putting an end to his cruel trade. Valerie Castillo. Valerie Castillo, Jorge's wife, was deeply involved in the trafficking ring. She also tricked the immigrants into trusting them, only to betray them when they couldn't pay up. Dexter considered her equally guilty and set her up in the kill room alongside her husband. Jorge and Valerie tried to plead for mercy, but Dexter had no sympathy for them, seeing as they were racist murderers, luring desperate migrants to their deaths. He performed his ritual on her as well, slicing for the blood slide before stabbing her in the chest, executing both partners in the same night. Due to a time crunch, Dexter was only able to dismember Jorge, but had to toss Valerie into the sea in one piece. Later, ITK retrieved her body, and it was soon found by police. Dexter had to make it look as if Jorge killed his own wife and skipped town to avoid an investigation. Dr. Emmett Meridian. Dr. Emmett Meridian was a wealthy psychiatrist who preyed on his patients' vulnerabilities, manipulating them into committing suicide to feel powerful. Dexter looked into him after a series of suspicious suicides linked back to him and confirmed his pattern of exploitation. Once captured, Meridian was restrained in plastic in one of Dexter's carefully prepared kill rooms. Dexter confronted him with the files of the women he had driven to their deaths, forcing him to acknowledge his guilt. Unlike most victims, Meridian seemed fascinated by Dexter's dark side, but his curiosity could not save him. After performing his ritual, Dexter killed him by suffocation with plastic wrap before finishing him with a knife. Brian Moser, Rudy Cooper, the ice truck killer. Brian Moser, revealed as the ice truck killer, was not just Dexter's adversary, but also his long-lost biological brother. Unlike Dexter, Brian had fully embraced his homicidal impulses, dismembering prostitutes and taunting Dexter with staged crime scenes meant as messages. After Brian kidnapped Deborah and prepared to kill her, Dexter was forced into a devastating choice: embrace his brother's darkness or protect his foster sister. In the finale, Dexter subdued Brian in his apartment and bound him in his final kill room. The moment was highly emotional. Dexter longed for a bond with someone like him, but Brian's obsession with killing made coexistence impossible. With visible pain, Dexter slit Brian's throat, leaving the scene staged to look like a suicide. Little Chino. Little Chino was a towering enforcer for a gang known as the 29th Street Kings. He killed people with a machete if they crossed the gang or tried to leave it. Chino was incredibly smug. He taunted police and felt untouchable. Dexter originally tried to kill him in the second episode of season 2, but Chino broke free of the restraints and nearly overpowered him, forcing Dexter to retreat, a rare failure that shook his confidence. Determined to finish the job, Dexter tracked him again, shot him with a tranquilizer dart, and brought him to a new kill room. This time, he secured Chino properly, confronted him with the evidence of his brutal murders before killing him with his own machete, finally correcting his earlier mistake. Roger Hicks. Roger Hicks was a bitter, misogynistic car salesman who despised women and murdered them for his own sick pleasure. Dexter uncovered his crimes while pretending to shop for a car and later captured him as he left the lot he worked. On the table, Hicks tried to lie his way out of his predicament. He promised Dexter perks and cars, but Dexter knew he was an expert con man and didn't buy a word of it. He dismantled all of Hicks' lies, leaving him powerless. When Dexter opened up about having problems with Rita, Hicks started to spew vitriol about women, showing no remorse and only contempt. He even tried to get Dexter on his side, but that was his last mistake. When Hicks grossly insulted Rita, Dexter lost his cool. He screamed at Hicks not to talk about his girlfriend that way and impulsively stabbed him in the chest. Of course, Dexter collected his blood slide first, and by killing Hicks, he rid the world of the Predator's lies, his unreasonable hatred of women, and his murderous urges for good. Who knows how many women Dexter saved by taking out Hicks? Ken Olsen. Ken Olsen was not a true serial killer, but a sloppy vigilante desperate to imitate the Bay Harbor Butcher. By the time he ended up on Dexter's radar, Olsen had already killed 2 men, a drug dealer whom he'd run over with his car, and an abusive husband who he pushed down a flight of stairs. Finally, Olsen staged a clumsy third attempt to kill a thief inside an abandoned train car, but the man got away. His poor imitations enraged Dexter, who prided himself on precision and only viewed other killers as just justifiable victims, not low-level thieves, drug dealers, and domestic abusers. After knocking Olson unconscious in his home, Dexter transported him back to the train car, where he confronted him for his amateur methods. Instead of quietly disposing of him, Dexter turned the moment into a message. He decapitated and dismembered Olson with a cleaver and left the remains to be discovered by police, sending a warning to other potential copycats. Santos Jimenez. Santos Jimenez was one of the men who murdered Dexter's mother, Laura Moser, with a chainsaw, the event that created his dark passenger. When Dexter tracked him down decades later, Jimenez was working as a tavern owner and was still selling cocaine out of a remote cabin in the Everglades. This kill was different. It wasn't about justice, but about exacting revenge. Jimenez didn't recognize Dexter and mocked his mother, sparking Dexter's rage. A fight broke out, with Jimenez slashing Dexter's leg before being overpowered. Unlike his usual methodical kills using a knife or similar weapon, Dexter killed Jimenez with a chainsaw, cutting him up just as his mother had been, fueled by raw emotion. He was finally able to get some justice for his mother, but he wasn't able to dispose of the body right then because he had to go back and check on Rita and the kids. When he returned the next night to get rid of the remains, Dokes caught him and confirmed his identity as the Bay Harbor Butcher. Dexter was forced to lock Dokes away in the cabin while he tried to think of what to do with him. Jose Garza. Jose Garza was a drug dealer hiding out in Miami under the alias Christopher Harlow. Garza had been texting Jimenez about making a drug drop at the cabin, unaware that Dexter had already killed him. Dexter decided to text back as if he was Jimenez to lure Garza to the cabin as part of his ongoing plot to frame Dokes as the Bay Harbor Butcher. Dexter found out that Garza had killed a person, making him fair game in his eyes, and if Dokes was found in a remote cabin with a chopped up body, it would be very difficult for him to convince people that he was not the Butcher. Dexter would be able to walk free without having to kill Dokes. Unlike Dexter's usual kills, this one was rushed and sloppy. He returned to the cabin with an unconscious Garza, dismembered him with a handsaw, and left the remains in trash bags in the corner of the small room. For the first time, Dokes begged him not to go through with it, but Dexter had made his decision. He was killing a man just to avoid prison, and that horrified Sergeant Dokes, who had to hear everything from the small cage Dexter had locked him in. The Garza kill marked a dangerous slip in Dexter's discipline and revealed that the Bay Harbor Butcher wasn't as noble as some people believed. Esteban and Tio Famosa. Esteban and Tio Famosa were brothers involved in smuggling cocaine for Santos Jimenez, minor players but dangerous nonetheless. When Sergeant Dokes, still being detained by Dexter earlier, escapes his cage and starts looking for a way, he sees them arriving by airboat. Since Dokes had to go around telling him he was a cop, the brothers knock him out and force him to transport the stash back to their boat. Dexter, arriving later with food for Dokes, sees what is happening and knows they will probably kill Dokes after he finishes moving the cocaine. He ambushes Esteban stealthily, off camera. Then, during a confrontation, Dexter uses Esteban's gun to shoot Tio. After the killings, Dexter and Dokes dump their bodies into the nearby water, and Dexter locks Dokes back up at gunpoint. This kill is interesting because Dexter wasn't sure if either of the men were killers. He killed them to save Dokes, but was he saving Dokes to be a good person, or did he just do it so he could be successful in his frame-up job? Lila West. Lila West began as Dexter's lover and confidant, but her obsessive nature quickly turned dangerous. After murdering Sergeant Dokes by blowing up the cabin Dexter had him trapped in, she also tried to kill Dexter, Astor, and Cody in a fire. Then she fled Miami and escaped to Paris. Dexter couldn't allow her to get away with killing Dokes, targeting his family, or continue to destroy lives, so he tracked her down overseas. When she arrived back at her loft, Dexter quietly approached and, without hesitation, injected her with M99. He laid her on her couch in a body bag and swiftly stabbed her in the chest, despite her pleas for mercy. It was a calm, almost surgical act, closing the chapter on a toxic relationship that had nearly unraveled his life. Cal Rooney was a murderer who worked the carnival. His murder is revealed in a flashback Dexter experiences while sitting in the dentist's chair. In the memory, Dexter recalls sedating Rooney with M99, preparing him in a kill room, and taking a blood slide before decapitating him with a cleaver. The kill emphasizes how Dexter was back into his routine after a very chaotic previous season. It also reminds us that he has been killing steadily between seasons, even if not all of his victims are shown on screen. When Dexter adds Rooney's blood slide to his new box, there There are already 4 slides in it, Rooney being the 5th. This indicates that off-screen, he had killed at least 4 people since Lila, someone he notably did not make a blood slide for. Oscar Prado. Oscar Prado, younger brother of Assistant District Attorney Miguel Prado, stumbled into Dexter's life unexpectedly. While attempting to kill drug dealer and murderer Freebo, Dexter was attacked by Oscar, who mistook him for a threat after Dexter walked in on him fighting with Freebo. Freebo was able to get away, but Oscar went after Dexter. In the struggle, Dexter fatally stabbed Oscar in self-defense. This unplanned killing set off a chain of events that would define the season and entangle Dexter with Miguel Prado. Fred Freebo Bowman. Freebo was a drug dealer believed to be responsible for multiple violent crimes, including the murder of Miguel Prado's brother, although we know Dexter was actually the one who killed Oscar. Dexter tracks Freebo down using leads about his girlfriend Tegan. One night, Dexter breaks into Tegan's apartment and realizes that is where Freebo had been hiding. He drags Freebo into a shed in the backyard, confronts him with pictures of his victims, including Tegan, who Freebo hadn't actually killed. Then he uses a knife and stabs him in the neck. Just after Freebo is killed, Miguel shows up, witnessing Dexter with the bloody knife. Dexter then steps outside, claiming he acted in self-defense. Miguel believes the story and feels indebted to Dexter for taking care of his brother's killer. Dexter's impressive ability to manipulate is highlighted in this scene. He even tricked the ADA. Nathan Martin. Nathan Martin was a registered sex offender who began stalking Astor. First, Dexter caught him talking to Astor in the grocery store all alone. Then he spotted Nathan photographing the kids on the beach and tracked the man's license plate. Later, Dexter broke into Martin's house and found him looking at the photos he'd taken of Astor. Enraged and determined to protect the children, Dexter strangled Martin to death, then casually took a carton of milk from the refrigerator before returning to Rita's. This kill was short, impulsive, and didn't follow Dexter's usual ritual. Most interestingly, Martin was not a killer, but he was still far from innocent. The kill represented Dexter's concern for the children and also that his code could evolve if it meant protecting his loved ones. Ethan Turner. Ethan Turner had murdered 2 of his wives and collected insurance payouts from both deaths, crimes Miguel Prado personally pushed Dexter to punish him for because Ethan kept slipping through the cracks of the justice system. After confirming Ethan's guilt, Dexter boarded the cruise he was taking to Bimini, where he killed him before throwing his body overboard. Dexter made it seem as if he wasn't going to kill Turner, but when he suddenly disappeared, Miguel knew Dexter had taken care of him. The kill was significant because it drew Miguel deeper into Dexter's world, exposing that Dexter didn't just kill out of self-defense, but to enact misjustice as he saw fit. Showing this side of himself to Miguel, who was power-hungry and self-important, would end up being a very dangerous decision. Clemson Galt was a professional hitman who ordered the murders of witnesses for drug cartels. This time, Dexter allowed Miguel to participate directly. They abducted Galt after breaking him out of jail before his trial, tied him to the table, and confronted him with his crimes. As Dexter prepared to finish the ritual, Miguel stepped in and drove the knife into Galt's chest himself. For the first time, Dexter shared his method with another person. But instead of finding a true partner, he had unleashed Miguel's hunger for killing without restraint or the discipline of the code. 26. Camilla Fig. Camilla Fig, longtime family friend and Miami Metro Records clerk, wasn't a code kill, but a mercy killing. Suffering from terminal cancer, she begged Dexter to help end her pain. After wrestling with the morality of it, Dexter honored her request. He brought her a slice of her favorite dessert, key lime pie, laced with a lethal dose of medication. Sitting at her side, Dexter held her hand as she peacefully passed away. For Dexter, it was the first time killing had nothing to do with compulsion or punishment. It was an act of compassion, a true mercy killing. Miguel Prado, once Dexter's friend and confidant, had revealed his true nature as a manipulative and power-hungry killer. After murdering Ellen Wolf, a defense attorney who opposed him, Miguel broke the code beyond repair. Dexter discovered that Miguel was planning to kill Maria LaGuerta as well, as she got closer and closer to finding out that it was Miguel who killed Ellen. Miguel had been lying to Dexter for weeks, and he was targeting innocents. Once on Dexter's table, he tried to talk his way out of the situation. He called Dexter his friend, and when that didn't work, his arrogance collapsed into desperation. Before finishing him off, Dexter told Miguel that he was actually the person who killed his brother Oscar, leaving Miguel in a crying rage as Dexter strangled him to death with a wire. It was a ritual kill, precise and deliberate, eliminating the greatest threat to Dexter's double life so far. Dexter was able to make it look like Miguel had been killed by the Skinner, a serial killer killer who was tormenting the city at that time as he searched for Freebo to settle a debt, and he would be next to face Dexter's wrath. George King, known as the Skinner, was a sadistic serial killer who kidnapped, tortured, and flayed his victims alive under the guise of needing to find Freebo. In the season 3 finale, King captured Dexter on the day of his wedding. Dexter managed to break free of his restraints by breaking his own hand and turned the tables. The fight was brutal, but Dexter overpowered King and snapped his neck, killing him instantly. He then threw him from a tall platform just as the cops showed up, and King's death looked like a suicide. Unlike his typical kills, this was raw survival, an act to protect his future with Rita, his stepkids, and his unborn child. Benito Gomez was a violent man with a trail of brutality behind him. His first victim was his own girlfriend. He beat her to death in a fit of rage. Later, he killed a father of 2 during another violent assault. When the case went to trial, Dexter recalled evidence from the wrong blood report while on the stand, which allowed Benito to walk free despite the clear evidence of his guilt. The failure haunted Dexter, who felt directly responsible for setting a murderer loose. To make it right, Dexter stalked Gomez, abducted him, and strapped him to a kill table in an abandoned boxing gym. Dexter had to hurriedly drive the knife into Benito's chest after Rita called him mid-ritual, asking him to pick up medicine for baby Harrison, who had an ear infection. Dexter didn't have time to properly dispose of the body and fell asleep behind the wheel on his way home. Eventually, he was able to dump Benito's body at sea as usual, but not without running into a lot of issues trying to remember where he'd stashed it. This kill was important because it showed how Dexter was struggling to maintain his ritual while adjusting to sleepless nights with baby Harrison, illustrating the trouble he would have balancing his dark passenger with his family life. Zoe Kruger was a Miami police officer who murdered her husband and young daughter to escape her unfulfilling family life. She staged the crime scene to look like a break-in by a local drug dealer she helped put away, but soon Dexter uncovered her lies after noticing inconsistencies in her reports and realizing she had manipulated the investigation in her favor. When Dexter started vetting her, Zoe turned the tables by breaking into Dexter's home, planning to kill him and make it look like a burglary gone wrong. Anticipating this move, Dexter was lying in wait in his home. He overpowered her after a brief scuffle, drugged her with M99, and transported her to a kill room he prepared in her daughter's room. He confronted her with evidence of her crime until she stopped denying it. Her arrogance was cut short, however, when Dexter buried his knife into her chest. Her death was especially symbolic because she represented the abuse of power inside police departments, serving as a dark mirror of Dexter's own double life as a predator working within law enforcement. The main difference being, of course, that Dexter would never kill a child, let alone his own. Zoe thought they were alike, but there were fewer similarities than she could recognize. Before you watch any further, I'm happy to finally announce that I'm releasing the first limited drop of my t-shirts. At the start, there are only 100 available, so make sure you buy them while you can at dtmerch.store. Enjoy the video. Jonathan Farrow was a successful, yet arrogant fashion photographer who routinely belittled and objectified his models. When his models started to turn up dead, Dexter investigated and became convinced that Farrow was the killer. Dexter set up a kill room in Farrow's studio, drugged him, and confronted him, accusing him of the string of murders. Farrow mocked Dexter, but maintained his innocence. Unmoved, Dexter drove the knife into his chest and took his blood slide. The tragic twist came the next day when it was revealed that the real murderer was Farrow's assistant. This marked one of the rare times in the series that Dexter killed an innocent man, violating the code. This haunted Dexter, showing the cracks in his judgment and highlighting more of the consequences that came with juggling kills with his busy family life. Stan Beaudry. Stan Beaudry was a long-haul truck driver in Miami who had once beaten a prostitute to death with a crowbar in 2007. Due to a chain of custody error with the murder weapon, the case was dismissed and Beaudry walked free. When Miami's police started closing in on Trinity, Dexter chose Beaudry as a scapegoat to divert attention from Arthur Mitchell. Posing as a trucker named Little Chopper, Dexter spoke over a CB radio to locate Beaudry at Freddy's truck stop. He hid in the back of Beaudry's truck, and when Beaudry climbed in, Dexter strangled him unconscious. In the truck bed, Dexter quickly set up a makeshift kill room, collected a blood slide, then used a reciprocating saw to slash through Beaudry's throat. He dismembered the body and dumped the remains, then planted false evidence, including Trinity's DNA and items linking Beaudry to Christine Hill, in Beaudry's truck and shack, so police would suspect him as the Trinity Trinity Killer. This framing successfully bought Dexter the extra time he needed to target Arthur Mitchell. Arthur Mitchell, aka the Trinity Killer. Arthur Mitchell was one of Dexter's most dangerous and complex adversaries. Outwardly a family man and church deacon, he was living a double life as the Trinity Killer, responsible for a decades-long series of murders across multiple cities. After a season-long game of cat and mouse, Dexter finally captured Trinity in the season finale. Once he had Arthur strapped down in a kill room designed specifically for him, Dexter revealed that he knew all of his secrets, forcing him to face the reality of his crimes. Trinity had hundreds of victims, and Dexter had pictures of virtually all of them hung up around the room. Unlike most victims, Arthur wasn't terrified. Instead, he seemed to almost welcome the end, confident in his legacy and ready to be stopped. Dexter killed him with the same framing hammer Trinity used to kill his last bludgeoning victim, ending his life at last. However, the apparent triumph turned hollow when Dexter returned home to discover that Arthur had killed Rita before Dexter could capture him, leaving Harrison in a pool of her blood, mirroring Dexter's own childhood trauma. The entire season, Dexter had been trying to prove that he could have it all: a happy, healthy family, and his secret life as a killer. But discovering his wife dead in a bathtub and his son crying covered in her blood shattered any hope of that. In the end, it was Dexter's own selfishness that got Rita killed. One of the most haunting facts is that Dexter will never know if Arthur exposed his secret to Rita before killing her. Rankin was a rude man with a foul mouth who Dexter encountered shortly after running away following Rita's murder. Overwhelmed with grief and emotionally wrecked, Dexter snapped when Rankin insulted him and Rita. He beat Rankin to death in a public restroom without preparation or even taking a blood slide. It was messy and reckless. One of the only truly impulsive kills Dexter had ever committed, and it showed how Rita's murder left him destabilized and vulnerable. Boyd Fowler was an animal sanitation officer who, along with 4 of his friends from childhood, abducted and murdered women, dissolving their bodies in industrial barrels of chemicals. Dexter identified him as the Barrel Girl Killer after finding his barrel-filled burial ground where he left the women they killed to rot. During their confrontation, right as Dexter drove the knife into Boyd's chest, Lumen Pierce, their next intended victim, witnessed the entire kill, setting off the central arc of season 5 and leaving Dexter to solve the problem of what to do with someone who watched him commit murder. Dan Mendel was a seemingly normal dentist who secretly participated in the Barrel Girl rapes and murders. Lumen, operating alone at first, tricked him into a date while wearing a disguise, but then lured him to a warehouse and fired multiple shots, trying to kill him for what he'd done to her. When he didn't die right away, she panicked and called Dexter for help. Dan staggered away, but left a blood trail that led Lumen and Dexter to his hiding spot. When Dexter pulled him out and confronted him, Dan attempted to play innocent, but Dexter walked in on him talking on the phone with one of his accomplices, insulting Lumen and alerting them to the fact that she was still alive. At that point, his guilt was evident, and Dexter snapped his neck, killing him instantly. This marked the beginning of Lumen and Dexter's partnership, and they went on to target the remaining members of the gang together. Lance Robinson. Lance Robinson was a killer who preyed on gay men, luring them through internet ads by promising sexual encounters and then murdering them. Dexter spots him after watching him lead one man toward the public restrooms at a beach while he's there with Harrison. Dexter arranges to meet Lance through the same chat site under a pseudonym. He injects Lance with M99 and begins wrapping him in plastic in an RV he rented for the kill room when Lumen calls him in a panic, having shot one of her abusers, Dan Mendel. Dexter throws Lance in the trunk of his car and rushes to help Lumen. Eventually, Lance wakes up, escapes, and makes a break for it, still wrapped in plastic. Just as Lance is about to make it into flashlight beams from Deborah, Masuka, and paramedics who came to investigate the gunshots from Lumen, Dexter catches him and drags him back. With no chance of Dexter being able to get rid of Lance's body, Dexter places it next to Dan Mendel's body and sets up the scene so investigators think the 2 men killed each other during a sexual encounter gone wrong. The bodies are found, and Masuka suggests autoerotic mummification was the cause, and the case is effectively closed. Cole Harmon. Cole Harmon was Jordan Chase's head of security and an active member of the Barrel Girl gang. When Lumen accidentally crossed his path at one of Jordan's public speaking events, he recognized her, tracked her down, and nearly strangled her to death. Dexter arrived just in time and ambushed him in the hotel suite. He incapacitated Harmon, and they got him on a kill table then and there. He refused to turn on Jordan or the other members of the gang, even when confronted with the evidence of his own guilt. Dexter killed him with a stab to the chest, and later he and Lumen dumped his body at sea, permanently erasing his role in the ring. Stan Liddy. Stan Liddy was a disgraced ex-cop hired by Quinn to dig up dirt on Dexter. Obsessed with redemption and rejoining the force, Liddy illegally surveilled Dexter and Lumen, gathering damning video evidence of them dumping bags into the ocean. After Quinn told Liddy to abandon the investigation into Dexter, he went rogue and decided to kidnap Dexter and hand him over to the police one way or another just to get his job back. But Dexter was able to overpower Liddy, and in the struggle, Dexter was forced to stab him to get away. Unlike most of his kills, this one was purely self-defense. Had Liddy not kidnapped Dexter, he may have lived to see another day. However, the kill was also necessary to protect his secret and Lumen from exposure. It's also worth noting that although Dexter did not kill them himself, he was present for the murders of Alex Tilden and Jordan Chase. These members of the Barrel Girls gang were killed by Lumen, but she probably wouldn't have been able to pull those kills off without Dexter's assistance. Ben and Roger. Ben and Roger were Miami paramedics who profited by letting vulnerable patients die so an ER doctor could harvest and sell their organs and split the profits with them. Dexter lured them to a staged emergency, injected both with M99, handcuffed them to the gurneys in the back of the ambulance, and confronted them with their crimes. After taking blood slides, Dexter used the ambulance's defibrillator to stop their hearts and later disposed of their remains in the Gulf Stream. Joe Walker. Joe Walker was a man who killed his wife, Janet Walker, and then staged it as a suicide. Dexter becomes suspicious when he notices blood under Janet's fingernails in the crime scene photos. At a high school reunion, Dexter gets a blood sample from Joe by elbowing him during a touch football game, then lures him to his death under false pretenses as usual. When Joe is confronted, he finally admits Janet's death was intentional, and that he'd done it to avoid a messy and expensive divorce. After Joe's confession, Dexter strikes him with a hammer and then stabs him in the chest, ending his life and avenging his old classmate, Janet. Julio Benes. Julio Benes was the leader of the Locos gang, an ex-convict who ran a terror campaign in his neighborhood, making people disappear and killing those who crossed him. He went to the mechanic shop of a man named Brother Sam, looking for a member of his gang, Nick, who was trying to leave, which is not allowed. Dexter was visiting Brother Sam when Benes showed up and was able to stop him and his goons from harming Sam by flashing his forensics badge for Miami Metro. After the thugs leave, Dexter tracks Benes down after investigating the disappearance of a man named Hector Nunez, a barber shop owner who was never seen again after dealing with Julio. In a showdown, Dexter sedates Benes, places him in the barber chair at Hector's shop, wraps him in plastic, and confronts him with evidence of his crimes like he does all his other victims. Dexter slashes Julio's throat in the barber chair, killing him in an instant. It's a kill in line with Dexter's normal ritual, and it fit the code too, but it is interesting because it's unclear if Benes would have been on Dexter's radar if he hadn't threatened his friend Sam. Did Dexter already start to care about Sam in such a brief amount of time? Was he trying to make a new friend despite all of the trouble he had when he did so in the past? It's obvious that throughout the series, Dexter's longing for connection never seems to fully go away. Walter Kenny, aka the Tooth Fairy Killer. Walter Kenny was an elderly man and former serial killer once known as the Tooth Fairy. He killed prostitutes and collected their lateral incisor teeth. Dexter tracks him down at Coral Island Retirement Village after confirming his identity through the trophies of missing teeth he kept in a box. Dexter pretends to befriend him for a while, then later is able to capture him after Kenny tries to kill him. He straps Kenny to a recliner in his room, takes a blood slide, and then suffocates him with a pillow, so it appears he died of a heart attack. Afterwards, Dexter dumps Kenny's box of trophies into the ocean. attention, so that he will be known only as a miserable old man with no family left that loved him, instead of a scary and notorious serial killer who was never caught. He didn't want his remaining family members to have to learn that about him, and he didn't want Walter to have the satisfaction of being immortalized, even in death. Nick was a troubled young man, an ex-con, and one of Brother Sam's workers. Brother Sam invited him to work at his mechanic shop to give Nick another chance at life after getting out of jail and getting entangled with a dangerous local gang, the Locos. But one night, he shot Brother Sam under unclear circumstances, ultimately killing him after he had a short stint in the hospital. Dexter confronts Nick later to let him know that he knows Nick killed Brother Sam. Initially, Nick acts apologetic and says he wants to see Sam to make things right, but when Dexter tells Nick that Sam already succumbed to his injuries, his feigned remorse fades away. He laughs, saying that no one could do anything because there were no witnesses to his crime and no other evidence linking him to Brother Sam's death. This infuriates Dexter. Despite Sam's dying wish for Dexter to forgive Nick, in a burst of anger, Dexter drags him into the same water Sam baptized him in and drowns him. Nick's death was more emotional than ritualistic, driven by Dexter's frustration and sense of betrayal. Dexter's sense of justice overpowers his ability to forgive. The murder of Nick makes one wonder if Dexter is even capable of forgiveness. Norm was the owner of the Shady Lane Motel in Kearney, Nebraska, where Dexter stayed on his way to confront the son of the Trinity killer, Jonah. His entire family was now dead, and Jonah made the mistake of telling the police that Arthur killed them. Dexter knew that couldn't be true because he killed Arthur years prior, so he decided to go to Nebraska to talk to Jonah face to face. Norm tried to extort Dexter after finding his knives and a gun in his car. He was worried that Dexter would report the weed he was growing near the hotel property and demanded money if Dexter didn't want anyone finding out about the strange weapons he had in his car. Norm points the gun at Dexter, threatening to kill him if he doesn't pay up, and in response, Dexter kills him to protect himself. This kill is also notable as Norm is the only person Dexter is known to have killed in Nebraska, and Dexter didn't even know if Norm fit the code. Dexter's typical subconscious apparition of Harry had recently been replaced by his sadistic brother Brian, and it was clearly influencing Dexter's increasingly reckless behavior. Steve and Beth Dorsey were a married couple who were willing disciples of the Doomsday Killer, Travis Marshall. Steve and Beth actively participated in the planning of the next tableau. Eventually, mistaking Steve for Travis, Dexter finds him while he worked creating the wormwood poison per Travis's instruction. Because of how deadly the final product would be, he was working in a hazmat suit that obscured his identity. When Dexter boarded the boat, Steve noticed him and grabbed a knife. Of course, Dexter is able to disarm him and ends up stabbing him in the stomach. Beth tries to execute her part in Travis's poison gas plan at Miami Metro, but Dexter intervenes and prevents mass harm right in the nick of time. She ends up locked in a room with the poisonous gas while the rest of the building is evacuated. Steve and Beth's death is more the result of their own beliefs and Travis's manipulation rather than Dexter's personal desire to kill them. In a way, they were as much Travis's victims as Dexter's. They were collateral damage of his insane and demented plan to bring about the end of the world. Alberto was the smuggler and the captain of a boat carrying Cuban migrants to Florida. After Travis tried to kill Dexter by leaving him out to sea in what he called the Lake of Fire, Alberto and the passengers of his boat pulled Dexter from the water. During the trip to the shore, Alberto turned violent. He took out a gun and demanded valuables from the people on board while holding a pregnant woman at gunpoint. Dexter intervened to protect the passengers. He grabbed a nearby boat hook, plunged it into Alberto's stomach before he threw him and the hook overboard. Dexter then piloted the boat to shore so he and the migrants could swim to safety. His sense of justice and desire to live shine through in this scene. He wasn't going to let Alberto torment those vulnerable people and steal their possessions right in front of him. Travis Marshall was the one true Doomsday Killer, convinced he was fulfilling God's plan by creating various tableaux of religious and apocalyptic imagery, each of which requires a human sacrifice. He manipulated followers, killed his own sister, even went so far as to orchestrate a mass murder attempt inside of a police station. fashion. In the finale, Travis kidnaps Dexter's son Harrison for sacrifice in his tableau. Dexter rescues Harrison, then lures Travis back to the church he had been using as his headquarters to plan the tableau that's been turned into a kill room. There, Dexter confronts him, dismantles his spurious beliefs, and ultimately stabs him in the chest, ending Travis's delusional killing spree. This would have been a great triumph for Dexter if his sister Deb hadn't walked into the church at that exact moment and witnessed him kill for the first time in her life. Victor Baskov. Victor Baskov was a high-ranking member of the Koshka Brotherhood, as well as the lover and right-hand man to its head honcho, Isaac Sirko. After murdering Detective Mike Anderson on the side of the road to cover up the murder of a young stripper he had stowed in his trunk, he became Dexter's first target of the season. Dexter subdued him inside Miami International Airport, took him to an abandoned airport storage room, secured him to a table, and stabbed him in the chest before disposing of his body in the ocean. Because of Victor's rank within the Brotherhood, this set off a chain of events that eventually led Isaac Sirko right to Dexter, demanding answers and seeking revenge. Ray Speltzer. Ray Speltzer was a brutal serial killer who lured women to his home, then forced them into a deadly maze where he would chase them before murdering them, all while wearing a deeply disturbing bull helmet. He had already killed 2 women and gotten away with it. After Speltzer killed another woman and mocked law enforcement, Dexter set a trap. He captured Ray inside his own mausoleum workplace, chained him to a table, and killed him with a knife to the chest before cremating his remains. This kill gave Dexter great satisfaction because of Speltzer's cruelty. An unnamed hitman. This unnamed hitman was a contract killer hired by George Novikov to kill Isaac Sirko. Dexter breaks into Victor Baskov's apartment where Isaac is staying while he was in Miami and encounters the hitman there. The hitman pulls a gun after Dexter pretends to be the building superintendent, but Dexter quickly gains the upper hand. Dexter slashes his throat, killing him instantly, and then finds a picture of Isaac on his person, proving that he was the hitman's intended target. The body is later found by Isaac and his associate in the apartment, and the police are called to investigate, forcing Dexter to work his own crime scene. Oleg Mikic. Oleg Mikic was an ex-military hitman for the Koshka Brotherhood who preferred long-range sniper kills. Hired to take out Isaac Sirko, he was testing a rifle at an outdoor firing range when Dexter ambushed him. While Oleg laid on his stomach preparing a shot, Dexter crept up behind him, stabbed him in the back, and covered his mouth to stop anyone from hearing his screams, killing the long-range killer at close quarters. Isaac's determination to get revenge for the death of Victor had made him a problem for the Brotherhood. They were losing money and facing intense police investigation because of his unwillingness to let Victor's death go. After seeing how clearly Dexter was able to kill, Isaac successfully convinced him to help take out the hitmen who were after him. As a result, they had begun sending hitmen after him, which is how Oleg ended up in Dexter's crosshairs. Clint McKay. Clint McKay was the abusive father of Hannah McKay. After he tried to extort Hannah for money and showed no remorse for the years of abuse he inflicted on her, Dexter decided to intervene. He confronted Clint and, after confirming Hannah's stories, stabbed him on his boat before tossing his body into the sea. This was one of Dexter's more personal kills, motivated by his feelings for Hannah and desire to protect her. Notably, Clint was not a known killer. Again, Dexter steps outside of the code here to protect someone he cares about. Hector Estrada. Hector Estrada was the last living man involved in the chainsaw massacre of Dexter's mother. Estrada had been in prison for decades, but was released on parole per Maria LaGuerta's insistence as she tried to prove that Dexter was the Bay Harbor Butcher. Dexter saw this as his chance for ultimate revenge. He lured Estrada to a shipping container mirroring the site of his mother's murder, confronted him with his role in the slaughter, and then stabbed him in the chest, finally avenging his mother's death. Dexter had planned to kill Maria as well and make it look like Estrada had done it to get her off his back once and for all, but Deb intervened and ended up being the one to murder LaGuerta to save her brother. Unknown victim. As season 8 kicked off, Dexter was seen falling back into a routine following the death of Maria LaGuerta. Part of that routine included getting back into his kill ritual, of course. He is shown killing an unidentified person, and nothing is known about them other than the fact that the man was a killer and had found himself on Dexter's kill table. It can be assumed he was not the only person Dexter killed off screen in between seasons 7 and 8, just as he had unseen victims between previous seasons. Andrew Briggs. Andrew Briggs was an armed robber who had stolen roughly $500,000 in jewelry and skipped bail. Deb had become romantically involved involved with him while working undercover to recover the jewels. Dexter tracked them down in Fort Lauderdale and confronted his sister while she was shopping. Deb rejected him and told Dexter that she hated him after she was compelled to kill Maria for him. Later, Dexter found out that a hitman named El Sapo was going to meet up with Briggs under the guise of being a fence interested in buying the jewels, when in reality he was just planning to kill Briggs and steal the jewels. This put Deb directly in harm's way, prompting Dexter to return to Fort Lauderdale in an attempt to save her before El Sapo showed up. But when he got there, she still wanted nothing to do with him, and Briggs came outside to confront Dexter and tell him to leave them alone. The encounter turned physical, and Dexter pushed Briggs back into the motel room where Briggs lunged for a knife on the dresser. Unfortunately for him, Dexter was quicker. Dexter grabbed the blade and fatally stabbed Briggs in the ensuing struggle. The killing was chaotic, and it complicated Deborah's job. She was only further infuriated by Briggs' death, and the rift between her and Dexter continued to grow. Ron Galuzzo. Ron Galuzzo was a cannibalistic killer who operated as a fitness equipment salesman. In his search for the brain surgeon, Dexter discovered that Galuzzo murdered people and ate them, storing remains in his refrigerator. After gathering that evidence, Dexter trapped Galuzzo in his very own kitchen. Confronting him with proof of his gruesome acts, Dexter killed him with a knife to the chest. A.J. Yates. A.J. Yates was a former patient of Dr. Evelyn Vogel, who hid a monstrous double life beneath a neat suburban exterior. Vogel and Dexter first suspected him of being the brain surgeon because of a surgical scar on the back of his head and the murder paraphernalia and jars Dexter found in a hidden basement lair. Also in his lair, he kept a shrine of right shoes taken from his victims. Yates's MO was grotesque and methodical. He imprisoned women for days, systematically broke each toe on the right foot, stabbed them, and buried the bodies in his backyard under rose bushes. He even had a survivor, Janet Thornton, whom Dexter pulled from a small enclosure where Yates locked her away. When Dexter and Deborah finally confronted Yates in his home and found Dr. Vogel gagged in a closet, Dexter had to improvise a weapon, using a long curtain rod to impale Yates as he hid under a bed. Though initially believed to be the brain surgeon, later evidence showed the real brain surgeon remained at large. Still, Yates's crimes and his close call with Vogel made him one of the season's most chilling antagonists. Oliver Saxon, aka Daniel Vogel. Oliver Saxon was actually Daniel Vogel, the long-lost son of neuropsychologist Dr. Evelyn Vogel, who assumed the identity of a deceased boy to hide in plain sight. As a youth, Daniel drowned his younger brother and later started a fire at the institution where he was confined. The fire killed several children, establishing him as both a mass murderer and later a serial killer. In Miami, he became the brain surgeon due to his signature of surgically removing the anterior insular cortex from victims, the brain region tied to empathy, and leaving the excised brain parts on Dr. Vogel's doorstep as a message to her. As the season reached a head, his violence escalated into profoundly personal attacks. He slit his own mother's throat in front of Dexter. He murdered a U.S. Marshal, and then he critically wounded Deborah, leaving her with catastrophic injuries that eventually resulted in her being taken off life support. Saxon was eventually captured as he stalked through the hospital looking to finish Deb off for good. He was taken into custody, and that is when Dexter put his plan into motion. To get revenge for all that he'd done, Dexter entered Saxon's holding cell under the guise of performing a gunshot residue test. He tricked Saxon into attacking him, and in the final struggle, Dexter killed Saxon by stabbing him in the neck with a pen. He spasmed and fell to the floor where he quickly bled out. Because Dexter got him to attack first on camera, the claim that he attacked Saxon in self-defense was bought by all relevant parties, and he was once again able to get away with his vigilante-style justice even when there were witnesses. And that was the end of Saxon. However, it's probable that much like killing Trinity, the victory was hollow, because either way, Deb was still gone. And that truly crushed Dexter, like no loss he had suffered before. Deborah Morgan. By the end of season 8, Deborah was shot by Oliver Saxon and left in critical condition. After surgery that made her prognosis look promising, she suffered a debilitating stroke, leaving her in a vegetative state. Knowing she would never recover and unable to let her live that way, Dexter made the most painful decision of his life. He disconnected her from life support, carried her body to his boat, and buried her at sea. Deborah's death was not a ritual kill, but an act of mercy, and it ultimately ended Dexter's life in Miami. He moved to Oregon to live in solitude and shame, unable to bear what had happened to his sister, even if he had avenged her death by taking out Saxon. Matt Caldwell. Matt Caldwell was the reckless, entitled son of Kurt Caldwell, a prominent member of the Iron Lake community. He had a history of dangerous behavior, including a drunken boating collision that he intentionally caused, killing 5 people. After Matt impulsively shot a white buck during hunting season, an animal the Seneca community considered sacred and Dexter had grown quite fond of, Dexter hit him in the face with the butt of his gun before bringing him back to a kill room and stabbing him in the chest. He later dismembered the body and he hid the remains under a fire pit in his yard. Since leaving Miami, Dexter had been on a 10-year hiatus from killing, but something about Matt made him snap and return to his old ways. And he didn't stop there. Jasper Hodge. Jasper Hodge was a drug dealer in Iron Lake who manufactured fentanyl-laced pills, many of which were potent enough to kill. When Harrison nearly overdosed on one of Jasper's pills, Dexter zeroed in on him. Using leads from Sergeant Logan, Dexter breaks into Jasper's house, sedates him with ketamine, and straps him to a table. He forces Jasper to look at photos of the fatalities caused by his pills, but Jasper refuses to take responsibility, blaming addicts and calling Harrison a weak junkie. Just as Dexter is about to kill him, Sergeant Logan arrives outside, forcing Dexter to change plans. Rather than murder him outright, Dexter makes Jasper inhale a lethal dose of fentanyl, stages his death to look like an accidental overdose, and leaves him seated in a chair. Afterwards, Angela Bishop examines his body, noting the needle mark and surrounding circumstances. But officially, Jasper's death is ruled an overdose. Elric Kane. Elric Kane, a truck driver and henchman working for Kurt Caldwell, was sent to capture Dexter and bring him to witness his son's death at Kurt's hand. Kurt was trying to get even with Dexter for killing his son, Matt. So Elric knocked Dexter out, tied him up, and put him in his truck and drove him towards Kurt's property. But when Dexter woke up, he managed to escape and led Elric on a chase through the woods, deliberately leaving a blood trail to mislead him and throw him off his trail. Their final confrontation occurred inside a summer camp cabin where Dexter ambushed Kane and stabbed him in the chest. Despite Kane's insistence that it was just a job and nothing personal, Dexter killed him swiftly. While they were in the truck, Dexter heard Elric talking to Kurt about having Harrison, so he knew he had to get to Kurt's cabin quickly to save his son. For Dexter, that made the matter incredibly personal. Wiggles the Clown. Wiggles was a children's entertainer who, beneath the clown persona, was actually a pedophile and murderer. In one of Dexter's flashbacks, he recalls sneaking into the carnival-style business Wiggles worked for and subduing the predator after discovering his crimes. Of course, Dexter restrained him in a kill room and stabbed him to death while pictures of his victims hang above his head. This flashback highlights that Dexter's dark passenger was active long before New Blood, but he still wasn't quite ready to tell Harrison the truth of everything. So rather than admit to killing the clown, he just tells Harrison that he scared Wiggles and let him go. Harrison eventually realizes this isn't true, but in the moment, it was a convenient lie to keep Harrison from freaking out about who and what Dexter really is. Instead, in that instance, Harrison compared his father to Batman. Kurt Caldwell. Kurt Caldwell, the wealthy truck stop owner and unofficial patriarch of Iron Lake, was revealed to be a prolific serial killer who had been preying on vulnerable young women for decades. His very first known victim was Iris, Chief Angela Bishop's best friend, whom he murdered as a teenager when she tried to hitchhike to run away from home. Over the years, Kurt perfected his ritual. He lured runaways with promises of food and shelter, locked them in his cabin, and when he was ready, he would release them and then stalk them with his rifle and shoot them dead. He embalmed and preserved their bodies in a secret underground bunker, turning them into his own personal macabre trophies. After Dexter and Harrison discovered the bunker filled with Kurt's victims, they were determined to take him out. Dexter exposed Kurt's crimes in front of Harrison, pulling back the curtain on his monstrous double life. During the confrontation, Harrison distracted Kurt just long enough for Dexter to sneak up behind him and inject him with ketamine. Dexter set up a kill room in Kurt's trophy room, and with Harrison watching, Dexter drove a knife deep into Kurt's chest, finally putting an end to his decades-long reign of terror over the women in and around Iron Lake. Sergeant Logan. Sergeant Logan was a kind-hearted Iron Lake police officer, wrestling coach, and somewhat of Harrison's mentor. After Dexter was arrested, Logan tried to stop his escape. Dexter, desperate to reach Harrison, attacked Logan in his cell, putting him in a chokehold and demanding the keys. When Logan refused and tried to shoot at Dexter, Dexter snapped his neck, killing him on the spot, took the keys, and navigated his way back to Harrison. Unlike his other kills, this was a reckless, selfish murder that violated Dexter's code in the worst way. way, Logan's death marked a turning point, convincing Harrison that Dexter was an irredeemable liar who needed to turn himself in or be put down. When Dexter refused to go back to jail, Harrison turned his rifle on his father, seemingly killing Dexter in the series' final moment. It was perhaps one of the most heartbreaking scenes of the entire show, but of course, now we know that Dexter would return. Ronald Red Schmidt, aka the Dark Passenger. Ronald Schmidt, nicknamed Red, was Dexter's first victim in Resurrection. He carried a deep resentment toward rideshare services and their drivers, which had driven his father to suicide after the collapse of his taxi business. Schmidt redirected that bitterness into a series of murders, targeting your car drivers and cutting off their heads. Dexter tracked him down after recognizing the pattern and, posing as a driver himself, managed to lure Schmidt in. After confirming his guilt, Dexter injected him with M99, bound him in plastic, and killed Red inside his own apartment. He stabbed Schmidt cleanly in the chest, then assumed his identity to infiltrate Leon Prater's secret society of serial killers. This kill set the stage for Dexter's return, reminding both him and the audience that his Dark Passenger had not faded. Lowell Sloan, aka the Tattoo Collector. Lowell Sloan, an anesthesiologist by profession, led a double life as the Tattoo Collector. He was a serial killer who preyed on people with tattoos that caught his eye. He would follow their tattoo journey, stalk them, and knock them out with an anesthesia mask before he skinned them to preserve the tattoo he wanted as a trophy. Lowell killed at least 26 people, and some of his preserved skins were displayed in Leon Prater's serial killer trophy collection. Dexter learned of Lowell's next target, a tattoo enthusiast named Jules, whom Lowell had been obsessively following. When Lowell attempted to knock her out with anesthesia that night, Dexter intercepted him, forced the mask over Lowell's own face, and dragged him away to the kill room. Shortly after that, Lowell died when Dexter stabbed him in the chest. Though Lowell remained mostly calm during the kill, he lost composure when Dexter revealed he was actually the Bay Harbor Butcher, realizing the full magnitude of the person who'd come to kill him. Gareth Pike and his twin, aka the Gemini Killers. Gareth Pike and his identical twin brother, known together as the Gemini Killers, were notorious for murdering pairs of victims, usually siblings or couples, by binding them together, slashing their throats in mirrored fashion, and photographing the posed corpses. Gareth first broke into Dexter's apartment after seeing Dexter had taken his note from a bookstore. Dexter played along and offered Gareth a gin and tonic secretly laced with M99, sedating him and killing him shortly after. He ended up in the same furnace as Lowell and Red. Following day, at one of Leon Prater's gatherings, Dexter faced Gareth's surviving twin. Enraged by learning that Dexter killed his brother, the other Gareth attacked Dexter with the jagged end of a broken wine glass. Dexter overpowered him, turned the weapon back on him, punctured his neck, and killed him too. With both brothers eliminated, the Gemini Killer's reign of mirrored murders came to an end. And because no one else even knew that Gareth had a twin, and everyone saw the one Gareth attack Dexter first, he didn't face any immediate consequences for killing either of them. Leon Prater. Leon Prater was the central antagonist of Resurrection, a billionaire venture capitalist who was obsessed with serial killers after he watched his parents be killed by one as a child. Using his wealth, he constructed an underground society where murderers could gather, boast of their crimes, and present trophies to one another. Prater viewed himself not as a killer, but as a curator of death, surrounding himself with predators like Lowell Sloan and the Gemini twins, while fetishizing their art. After recognizing Dexter's identity as the Bay Harbor Butcher, Prater kidnapped Harrison Morgan for leverage, holding him at gunpoint while trying to force Dexter back to confront him. Prater revealed he wanted this to be his first non-impulsive kill. However, Harrison, who had been given a hidden M99 syringe by Dexter earlier for protection, seized a moment of opportunity and injected Prater with the tranquilizer during the confrontation. Rendering him unconscious, Harrison left, allowing Dexter to get Prater on a kill table in his disgusting vault dedicated to serial killer memorabilia. Prater woke up strapped to the ice truck killer's suicide table. He begged for mercy and offered Dexter money and security for Harrison. Dexter, unmoved and finding it funny that Prater believed he might be spared, refused to add Prater to his blood slide collection. He told Leon, "I keep trophies to remember, and I don't want to remember you." He then killed Prater, disposed of his body in New York Harbor, and left behind files from Prater's serial killer collection so that law enforcement would discover his crimes. Leon's good name was ruined, and no one would ever think of him the same way again. Dexter made sure of that. Dexter had plenty of kills that were done off screen. His total number of blood slides across the entire series indicates as much. He is a structured and prolific killer who is difficult to catch, allowing him to keep increasing his kill count. I'm sure we're all eager to see how much the number grows in the second season of Dexter Resurrection, because the Dark Passenger is more alive than ever now. If you like this in-depth breakdown of every Dexter kill, check out our video on every Easter egg resurrection, and don't forget to like and subscribe.